Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be across this beautiful blue-green globe of ours. Welcome to Seahawk Boys TV. The Seahawks overnight did something kind of unexpected, but really we should have figured this out ahead of time. They restructured the contract of DK Metcalf to push money into next year and added some void years. The question is, what does it mean? Well, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Seahawk Boys TV. I'm your host, Seahawk Boy Mike, in Las Vegas, Nevada, joined, of course, by my buddy Hecklefish, who was out drinking with me last night. Let me just tell you, you never, ever want to go drinking with an animal, a mammal, that literally lives in water mixed with vodka. You don't want to do that. It's bad. I have a headache. Okay. Well, overnight, in the dark of night, secretly, quietly, the Seattle Seahawks restructured the contract of wide receiver DK Metcalf. They gave him more money this year. They pushed money into future years, 2025, and they added 3 void years at the end of the deal. So he's under contract now, technically, at ridiculous numbers to 2028. But that's not really the important news. The important news is, what does it mean? What does this imply about the Seattle Seahawks thought process with regards not only to DK Metcalf, but to their team in general? And there's a couple, I ran across a pretty good thread today on X, and I think we'll just go to that and start talking about it. This is from Curtis Allen. I don't really know who Curtis Allen is, but I'm going to give him a follow after that. It says the Seahawks have restructured DK Metcalf to pick up $9.5 million of cap room. So they've added cap room for this year. I don't know what they needed it for. They already had cap space for injured reserve and things like that they might have to be accounting for. By the way, in Seahawks news, it was kind of important. George Fant is day to day with his knee injury. So apparently wasn't nearly as bad as it looked. So let's go through Alan's thoughts kind of generally reflect mine. So let's go through what he has to say about it and just kind of critique this and take a look at it and see what we think is the really important, relevant information here. Number one, he asks, is a move imminent? Not necessarily. This is more of a flexibility move at this point. If the Seahawks find a free agent or trade option they like, they have the cap room to do it. If they don't, they just roll that extra cap space into 2025. So why restructure now? Now, this is the important point. They could go out and make a trade at the trade deadline. I personally, if it was me, we've talked about this before, I would be a seller at the trade deadline. I would not be a buyer like we were last year. I think it was a catastrophic mistake to give up a second-round pick for Leonard Williams, who had a decent game on the inside on Sunday, but really isn't a world beater or anybody you get too excited about. They spent a lot of money and a second-round pick they could have used on a really good player at another position. So I'm not wild about them doing that. DK is actually one of the guys I would say we should be looking to trade at the trade deadline if we are not solidly in playoff contention. But that's just me. John Schneider obviously has different thought processes about how he wants to restructure the team and how he wants to build it. And he's been doing that now for 14 years. All right, point number two. If you're going to restructure a player to gain cap room, you want to do it at the beginning of the season as the Seahawks did. Why? Every week that passes by, the player gets a game check, and that reduces the amount you can gain by a restructure. Now, what we don't know is if this was just done overnight after Sunday's game or if it was done prior to the first game, which would make more sense because they'd save a game check of extra space under the cap for 2024. I'll tell you what this will do. This will allow them to very comfortably go out and sign 1 or even 2 new offensive linemen, 1 to play left guard, 1 to play right tackle. I would think Jason Peters would be on the list either way. He's played both positions before, and he's comfortable with the organization. And if Jason Peters is in shape, That's my top guy that I would bring in. There's some other names out there. Riley Reid. There's some good players out there on the offensive line, or at least players with names, guys that have performed well before. All right, point number 3 from Curtis Allen. The Seahawks appear to be targeting their aggression with the cap better, likely a Joey Lane influence. I think Joey Lane is a member of the front office or something. And point number 4, the 2026 cap now has a $7.125 million charge on it for the void years. Is that problematic? It can be. It does slightly take down their available cap in 2026, but consider $7.125 million on this year's cap is $2.789 of the cap. That same number in 2026 cap money will likely be less, $2.375. I don't see what difference that makes. 2026, you worry about 2026 and 2026, and there are plenty of options to move that around. All right, point number 5. This is a good signal that the Seahawks intend to extend Metcalf. It's good business to restructure players you intend to keep around. Why? Point number 6. If they leave in free agency or get traded, that money you pushed out comes right back as dead cap. Adams and Diggs were restructured last year, which was a huge mistake. And that cost the Seahawks 2024 cap room when they got released. Silver lining, they're clean for 2025. That doesn't matter. They were hamstrung in 2024. More than they should be for 2 average players. Point number 7. The Seahawks could have made a very similar move with Geno Smith and not Metcalf. They chose Metcalf. Well, they've chosen him so far. We don't know what's going to happen with Geno. They could still do the same thing. And he also points out, okay, the Seahawks Joey Lane effect is visible on this one. They add 3 void years to Metcalf's contract to pick this money up in 2024. Strong signal they intend to extend DK. Flexibility to make a serious addition this year. Doesn't hit 2025 as much due to the void years. You're going to get some reposts on that, buddy. Good thread. And you know what else you're going to get? You are going to get a follow for that. So Curtis Allen. Good thread, good information, interesting stuff to talk about. Now, I guess we have to look at what is the overall impact of the Seahawks salary cap. So let's slide on over. As it stands now, they did save extra space. They've got $13.241 million in cap space this year. And again, a percentage of that can be rolled into 2025, not all of it. So that is a mistaken point by Curtis Allen on that one. However, you only do that. I think you only do this if you intend to make more moves this year. And again, it could just be cautionary. It could just be that we're going to make space in case we need to trade a player. Or it could also mean they're going to bring in 1 or 2 guys this week to shore up the offensive line, which would be a smart move because their quarterback, Geno Smith, despite what the Geno Bros say, he's just not good enough. Under pressure, he's not. If you compare him to Matthew Stafford was under constant pressure against the Detroit Lions, and yet he made great throws, made big plays downfield. That's the difference between Geno and Stafford. And the Geno Bros, we're gonna now coin this phrase, the Geno Bros. They clearly don't understand that Geno Smith is not Matthew Stafford. They act like he's Matthew Stafford, but he's not. So we've got to protect him. Geno is a guy that if he's going to throw the ball downfield, he needs to get his legs into it. Russell Wilson was pure shoulder, pure arm, could whip the ball a mile down the field without using his legs. Geno is not like that. He needs protection up the middle. Seahawks don't have it because, again, a lot of people have been talking about John Schneider's lack of investment on the interior offensive line, and it was really exposed on Sunday against a not very good Denver team. So I'm a wizard. Yeah, no, I'm not. Treebeard. Lockett worked out. Thanks again, says Treebeard. Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. Let's go Seahawks. Lockett worked out. I don't get what you mean Lockett worked out. I guess he worked out for Tyler Lockett, worked out for the Seahawks. Let's go Seahawks. I'll tell you what, on the Bears. The Bears are really happy that we unloaded Darrell Taylor, who had 2 sacks and a forced fumble. Much better than any other Seahawks pass rusher. And when you say, okay, well, Boye Mafe had a great game on Sunday, and according to tape analysis, he did, and I've looked at it and I agree with it. He had a good game, but how much better a game would they have had rushing the passer if they had Darrell Taylor on the other side instead of Derek Hall, who didn't really do much? That's a good question. All right, so let's look at the Seahawks cap situation into 2025 now. What this does is instead of being only 7 million over the cap, we're now 19.5. Those of you who followed me from the Richard Hoagland days, think about that number. About $19.5 million over the cap in 2025. That is an untenable situation. I don't think it can be fixed with restructures and cuts. I just don't think it can be fixed. It's a big deal. You're going to have to cut a lot of good players. So if you slip on into 2025, so here's the thing. Now, I would have traded DK this year. I would have already traded him because as I look at our roster, we don't have a quarterback that can take advantage of his skill set. And for, anything you want to know about that, let's just take a look. Let's go back. I wonder if we could just play these highlights in the background. Let's play these game highlights in the background. Let's just go with scoring drives. Let's run some highlights in the background here. If you look at the targets last week, partly because of the protection, partly because I thought Geno was ineffective. I thought he was very slow in his play action. And that's something, I pointed out to Seahawk boy Dave, and I'm the only one as far as I know that's pointed this out, is if you watch the development of the Seahawks plays, especially early in that game, they were sluggish. Geno was very sluggish, getting to his spot. Even in play action, his fake handoffs were really slow. And that gives a team enough time to read what's going on, understand that it's play action, and get tightened up in their coverage because they know a pass is coming soon. I really got to say, I think Geno's sluggishness is a real problem and is going to be a problem for this offense. And that's something people aren't really factoring in, how slow he was actually getting to his spot. And people say, well, Geno didn't have any time. He had time. He's just not very quick off the ball, especially taking the snap from center. He's not quick. He's 34 years old. He's not going to get any quicker. That is a problem. You need to understand that it's going to affect the Seahawks offense. So now let's go to the receiving. You look down here. Okay, DK Metcalf, 4 targets. Zach Charbonnet, 3. Noah Fant, 4. Jackson Smith-Njigba, only 2. He had 2 catches, but only 2 catches. Tyler Lockett had 7 targets. So this tells you what teams are going to do against the Seahawks this year. I think this shows you what the strategy is going to be. And the strategy is going to be I think now after last week, teams are going to stack the run up the middle. They are going to really fill in the box and make the Seahawks beat them on the outside. They're probably going to double DK, take away his targets, and force Geno Smith, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Noah Fant, who did almost nothing in this game, to beat them. And I think they're saying, we don't think those guys can beat us. Now they're going to play a much better defense next week than they played this week. So will the offense be even less effective than it was against the Broncos at home? We just don't know. We hope not, but we just, in all honesty, don't know. So that's something to think about as we proceed through this and why I would do things differently. I mean, this is great. After watching the Jets last night, they may be out of the playoffs by the trade deadline for the most part. If I was them, I'd put Aaron Rodgers on the trading block. And if I was the Seahawks with $13.241 million in cap space, I'd be looking at buying that. Let's take a look at just for fun. I realize this is a crazy outside chance. What's his cap number? Yeah, it's cap number 17.161 million. Wow. So we have 13 million. His cap hit is 17, 14 pro. We could figure out a way to make some adjustments, and we could fix that. We could make that deal. We could make that deal. The question is, of course, what would the Jets want for him in return? Probably our first-round pick for a rental. It just depends. It depends on where the Seahawks are in contention and if they are willing to admit that they screwed up the quarterback position, which I think is the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem the Seahawks have is John Schneider's ego. You look at I had an interchange yesterday with someone on Seahawk Boy Mike Barris Twitter, which you can go follow me on Twitter X. And he said, "Yeah, I'm really PO'd as a Packers fan that we only got one ring out of Aaron Rodgers, as great as he was." Well, who was the general manager there? Ted Thompson. Who was Ted Thompson's mentor? Oh, sorry. Who did Ted Thompson mentor in Green Bay? John Schneider. John Schneider. How many Super Bowls wins did he get out of Russell Wilson? One. In spite of himself, I think, because Pete Carroll did a great job drafting guys he had coached against, recruited, or coached against and recruited in college. He did a fantastic job. And Scott McCloughan was there. So I don't see any reason why you might not make a trade like that. Now, there's another trade scenario that's out there. If you look at Dave Barras, Seahawk boy Dave Barras says, and he's brilliant about this. This is a brilliant observation. You are neither as bad nor as good as you look in week one. This is the first time a lot of the starters have really hit. This is, defenses are always ahead of offenses at this point. And, you can't really make judgments, unless, of course, you're the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers pretty clearly appear to be the worst team in the NFL. I think the Broncos are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and I think both teams are going to be in a position to draft very high next year. I expect the Panthers to end up, unless they make major strides and major improvements, with the number one overall pick. There are probably going to be 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks that are going to be considered first-round talents, and with Bryce Young failing epically in Carolina, Panthers probably could and should, if I was them, trade Bryce Young and draft another quarterback number one overall, like Quinn Ewers, who I think is fantastic. That's what I do. So then, as an exotic scenario, we're thinking this is way out. We're thinking April. There's so much football to be played, but what if this happens? What if they end up with the number one pick? What if there's somebody who justifies the number one pick, Shadur Sanders or something, and they like him? Seahawks could go get Bryce Young, and that would solve their problem. You could keep Geno as a bridge, or you could go to Sam Howell as a bridge. And you could try to make something out of Bryce Young. Now, Bryce Young looks terrible. He's on the worst run organization in the NFL. He's on the worst team. He's got no talent around him. He doesn't have competent coaching. Dave Canales was doing his commercials with his Latino accent. Oh, get out and vote for Democrats. I mean, come on. It's not the way he talked when he was here. I don't think, he's a Pete Carroll quarterback coach. I don't think he's a great coach. I think Ryan Grebb's a great coordinator. I mean, Mike McDonald's a terrific coach. So the Bryce Young the Seahawks would get would not be the Bryce Young the Carolina Panthers have gotten. And the Bryce Young the Seahawks would get has got first overall pick talent. If they could get that for a first-round pick or something, yeah, do it. Do it. But that's, again, 3 months out. We'll talk about that later. It's way too early to be talking about quarterback situations, whether it's trading for Aaron Rodgers or trading for Bryce Young. So the impact is that the Seahawks were $7 million over the cap for 2025. Now they're $20 million, almost $20 million over the cap. And then they have to make some tough decisions and things you have to think about. Now, Leonard Williams, by some accounts, people who watch tape said, they said he had a pretty good game. He had some pressures. He did a few things, but he's 31 years old. His cap number in 2025 is $29 million. Geno Smith is mid. I think he's this 17th, 18th, 19th ranked quarterback this year. Let's go take a look. Let's go over to NFL passing. Let's look at by quarterback rating. Quarterback rating, yeah, Geno is 17th, right where he was last year at 87.3. He only threw for 171 yards. That put him 19th. Okay, he had 1 touchdown, 1 interception. His completion percentage, I think, was fairly high. Yeah, he was number 9, but that's below Justin Fields, who didn't have much of a game. And wow, that'll be a fun game to watch. If Russell Wilson is healthy and plays against the Broncos in Denver, how great would it be if he went into Denver and threw 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, and humiliated the Broncos? God, that would be hilarious. And Sean Payton That'd be fucking hilarious. So, yeah, now granted, you look at all these stats and the bottom guy is Bryce Young, but Bryce Young has talent. He's in a terrible situation. He's undersized. Seahawks know or should know how to work around an undersized quarterback. I think Bryce Young, with the right coaching and the right situation, is his floor is Kyler Murray. His ceiling is Russell Wilson. I don't think he's going to be Russell Wilson, but I think he's a lot better player than he's shown these first two years. So, all right, 2025 salary cap. So then we're $19.5 million over. We have to get rid of some guys. Now, I would have traded DK for picks, and I would have used these picks to go get a quarterback because, to my mind, there is no reason to keep around and pay 25 to 30 million a year to a receiver who only gets 4 targets, 29 yards, no touchdowns, and is going to be 30 years old by the time you get a young quarterback in here up to speed. Even if you get one this year, it's going to be 29 or 30. And his speed is going to diminish. So I know I recognize he's our best player. I would have traded him before the season, but I'm realistic about how good the Seahawks quarterbacks are. Most of Seahawks Twitter is not. Most of the Seahawks blogosphere is not. The Geno Bros are not realistic about our quarterback situation, and neither are John Schneider and Mike McDonald and the Seahawks hierarchy. They're just not realistic about how mid our quarterback situation is. So we got to go out and get somebody better. And it's pointless to have Geno on the roster with a crazy contract that is going to kill our cap in 25, 26, and 27. However, let's look at other options. What else could they do? Well, the first thing I do, Geno Smith, $38.5 million salary cap. Boom, I'm getting rid of him. I'm going to save $25 million of that. I'm $5 million under the cap now. Tyler Lockett, this is a tough one, but with a $30 million cap, geez, and 33 years old, I'm bringing you back at $5 million a year, but I'm cutting you up front to clear the cap space before I do that. Draymond Jones, by all accounts and by my observation, had a slightly better game than he had last year. A little bit more involved, some pressures. $25.6 million for Draymond Jones. Now, again, he's mid. You can find guys that are that good. Leonard Williams, 31 years old. Drafted some guys to replace him. Move on from him. Uchenna Nwosu, this is a tough call because he's 29, going to turn 30. He's been injured now for 2 years. When's the last time he played a regular season game for this team? Week 1? When did he get injured? Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4? I forget. If he doesn't come back and play the rest of the season healthy and make plays, you got to look at him as a possible cut. Noah Fant, 2 targets, 3 targets. What was it? 4 targets. 4 targets. You're paying this guy. He's $13.5 million under the cap next year. You got 3 other tight ends on the roster. You can go find another tight end. Rest of these guys I'm pretty good with. George Fant won't be back after this injury. I don't think he comes back. So, and by the way, Byron Murphy did nothing in this game. So, okay, you've now cleared $60 million in cap space, and you still have DK. If you trade DK, save $10 million more, but the difference here, I don't think I would do this at this point. I would have done it before this. The difference here is that if you were to trade for somebody like Bryce Young, who had great upside potential, it makes sense to keep DK around because he will have already had 2 years in the league. There'll be 2 rough and tumble years. There'll be 2 years where things are not good. But it would make sense to keep him around. Absolutely makes sense to keep him around to help a guy like Bryce Young. and to invest long-term for the future. But DK's got to show more if he wants that big contract. Show more than he showed last week. So again, I think what we're back to here is we are back to a situation where the Seahawks are a little bit stuck. They're not quite good enough at quarterback. They have some cap flexibility this year to go get somebody at the trade deadline, whether it's a quarterback or another position, or to sign a couple of offensive linemen. That's what I do with that $13 million in space right now. I'd bring in 2 guys this week. Try to fix that interior offensive line, just like they did with Connor Williams. And I haven't really looked at Connor Williams reviews yet, but he's a decent player, and I'm sure he'll come around. He's played very well in the past. But 2025 is problematic. There are going to have to be some big roster changes. I don't think you can create hardly any space with just restructures and extensions. I don't think you can do it. I don't think any of the guys I just listed are worth extending. So, interesting situation. It appears they're going to stick with DK. That's fine. Then go get him a quarterback, is my perspective on that one. So, again, let's watch Bo Nix develop. I saw Rob Staten's stream with Jeff Simmons yesterday. I thought it was interesting for the most part, except again, he gets back on Bo Nix. He's way too hard on Bo Nix. And he talks about how he had Bo Nix as a 3rd round pick. Rob, I've got your last horizontal board. You had him at the top of the 2nd round, which is probably where he is. But what I'm trying to explain to Rob and everybody else is the ground has shifted. Okay. The trends are different. And guys that are top of the 2nd round or early 3rd round are going to start going in the 1st round. They're going to go in the 1st round if they're quarterbacks. It's like what we used to call the LA scale when I lived in LA. You know how there's the 1 to 10 scale for female hotness, right? Well, a 10 in Ames, Iowa is a 6 in LA because the women in LA, there's so many of them, their beauty is off the scale. It's the same thing now with quarterbacks. A 6 in the old draft evaluation process is now a 10 in the new quarterback scale. Why? Because everybody else in the league has figured out you have to have an elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl. The last time a non-elite quarterback won a Super Bowl was Nick Foles in 2015, and he was having 2016. He was having a career year. He never had a year like that again. That is pure luck. You go back, Joe Flacco, not elite, had an elite year, had an elite game. Brad Johnson, legendary Hall of Fame defense. And Rich Gannon was the opposing quarterback, and John Gruden figured him out and completely destroyed him. Don't talk to me about Trent Dilfer in 2000. Don't talk to me. He was the 8th overall pick. He was considered elite coming out of school, coming out of college. The only way you win a Super Bowl anymore, if you look at the last 25 years, is with an elite talent at quarterback. Russell Wilson, Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Aaron Rodgers. Those are the guys that win Super Bowls. Geno Smiths, Sam Howells, Trent Dilfers, they're just not going to win Super Bowls anymore. 1 out of every 10 or 15 years is the way it's going to go. And it's been a long time. And by the way, the Seahawks do not have a 2003 Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster or defense, or a 2012 Baltimore Ravens roster or defense, or a 2015 Eagles roster or defense, an offensive line. They don't have that. So don't delude yourself that they do. I don't like this move necessarily because of the implications of it, unless they go make a move for a quarterback. But then again, I'm always talking about the quarterback. So got good game, interesting game coming up this week. New England Patriots, again, it all comes back to how will Mike McDonald handle the 10 a.m. start time? He's an East Coast guy, East Coast time zone. He probably doesn't believe in the East Coast curse. It is real. I don't even know. I can't find the information anywhere. Will the Seahawks, and do they practice at 10 a.m. this week? Will they leave a day early to get their body clocks adjusted? Like they did under Pete Carroll. These were smart moves. And the Seahawks played extremely well at 10 a.m. The Mike Holmgren teams, not so much. They sucked. They sleepwalked through at least the first half and lost a lot of games they should have won against inferior teams. Are the Patriots inferior? I don't necessarily think so. Their defense is really good. I think their defense is going to give our offense a lot of problems. They're going to do the same thing other teams have done. You know, the Broncos showed how you can beat the Seahawks. Take DK away. Take DK away, and what do you got? Make Geno Smith, Noah Fant, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett beat you. And now they've learned stack the box against the run. So stack the box against the run, double team DK, leave everybody else one-on-one, and dare Geno Smith to beat you. Send the pass rush up the middle. Dare Geno Smith and those other guys to beat you. That's what the Seahawks are going to see. And until they solve it, like getting new offensive linemen out there or getting the ones they have to play a lot better, it's going to be a problem. So I think this game is problematic, and with the 10 a.m. start. I saw it as an easy win a week ago when I did my season prediction. After week one, I don't see it that way. And is Geno Smith actually better than Jacoby Brissett? Well, we're going to find out on Sunday. I'm not sure he is. Not sure he's that much better. So apologies to the Geno bros. A lot of implications for what happened today. And I think we have to really just, we're going to have to sit back and wait and see what the Seahawks do with this space. But it doesn't make any sense unless they're going to add to the team this year. The question is, what are they thinking about adding? And my other quarterback scenarios are just me spitballing. Just me spitballing. Aaron Rodgers, Bryce Young. Jets probably aren't going to trade Aaron Rodgers unless they're so bad and so out of it by October that they think, well, maybe there's a team that thinks they're a contender that wants to give us a first-round pick for Aaron Rodgers. If I'm John Schneider, I'm like, me, I'll do it. All right, that's going to do it for the show today. Thanks for being here. Quick one. I will be back with Toxically Masculine Tuesday tonight with Steve, Blake, and, well, I don't know if Steve's going to be on, but I know Blake's going to be there. Brian Engelman and I are going to be on tonight. We're going to do a little bit of news at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, and then we are going to tune in and live stream the Trump come swallow Horace debate and make some snarky commentary. All right, be there for that. Other than that, thanks a lot, guys. Glad you're here. Appreciate it. See you later.